This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and what you're looking at here, guys, is a UK government website called preparecampaign.gov, where they're urging families to get prepared for emergencies. Here they tell you how to be informed, how to make a plan, how to prepare your home, how to talk to others, and they also get into getting emergency supplies. They suggest that you put together an emergency kit of items for the home. Now, this has actually led to supermarkets in the UK urging against panic buying as the government launches this Preppers website, warning families to start a national crisis emergency kit of tinned food, batteries, and bottled water. Meanwhile, in Canada, the Canadian government has just issued this report, Disruptions on the Horizon. And here they show you 35 different scenarios and the various likelihoods of these scenarios unfolding here in Canada affecting Canadians, and they've put them into a category, broke them down, the top 10 potential disruptions that could impact society sometime within the next 3 to 9 years, as you can see according to this chart. Now, I find it interesting that all of this is coming out just a couple of months after this secret RCMP report forecasted a very bleak future in Canada. You may recall I reported this on this back in March. Secret RCMP report warns of civil unrest and revolt once Canadians realize they are broke. Troubling times are in store for Canadians, according to a secret RCMP report that suggests that Canada's current situation will probably deteriorate further in the next 5 years, guys. And now you have this new report showing you that these are some of the things that may cause this to happen over the next 3 to 9 years. And it's everything that you can see here, from artificial intelligence running the world to people not being able to tell what is true or not, to democratic systems breaking down, guys. So we're going to talk about all of this and much more in this video. But really quickly, just before we do, I'd ask that you check me out here at this Go Get Funding campaign. In just about 4 days from now, I'm going to be heading to Madrid, Spain to cover the annual Bilderberg conference, guys. This, of course, is the world's most secretive meetings that is being held by some of the world's most powerful and influential people. I will be there to continue to shine a light on the global powers that ought not be and shine a light on the deeds that are done in the dark. So if that is something you guys appreciate, please check out my Go Get Funding campaign, to where you can support my efforts to go expose Bilderberg this year in Madrid, Spain. All right, guys, let's start with this. This is the introduction to this new Canada government report put out by Policy Horizons, they're called, and the report is titled Disruptions on the Horizon. They say, today the world faces multiple complex crises that can contribute to unexpected disruptions. The Disruptions on the Horizon report stems from a critical question that many decision makers grapple with. What disruptions should we anticipate next? And some of the things that I think that are, plaguing society right now, one of the major disruptions that Canadians and other people around the world should be preparing for, that is completely, disregarded in this report, is the replacement of cash with CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies. I think this is a major thing that is going overlooked by this report, that we can see just being implemented right before our very eyes as cash slowly disappears, and a whole new era of digital currencies is being implemented that will ultimately have a greater deal of control over society. So again, that's one of the bigger things that I think got overlooked or completely ignored in this report. But having said that, let's look at the things they are talking about. The Disruptions on the Horizon 2024 report identifies and assesses 35 disruptions for which Canada may need to prepare, and explores some of the interconnections between them. These disruptions are potential events and circumstances that could affect our society and the way that it functions, as well as the people, the way people live and work and connect. Their impacts can be perceived as positive or negative, depending on one's perspective. That's an interesting point. While the disruptions presented in this report are not guaranteed to occur, they are plausible. Neglecting to consider them may lead to policy failure and missed opportunities. Thinking through possible disruptions when developing policies and programs and strategies could help seize opportunities, navigate impacts, and minimize risks. And that's a good point. That's exactly what we seek to do here today, ladies and gentlemen. Navigate impacts and minimize the risks, specifically risks to our autonomy, risks to our individual freedoms and liberties, risks to our freedom of movement, freedom of speech. These are the types of things that we're going to be focusing on in this video as they just try to engage in what can essentially amount to predictive programming by essentially telling you what is coming down the pike. But we're going to elaborate on that today, folks. So here are some of the things that, as you can see, the chart shows the likelihood of these things happening are high on the right, less likely on the left, and their impact being high impact up top and low impact on the bottom. For example, world war breaking out is low on the probability side, but high on the global impact side, obviously. Now, some of the things that are kind of over here on the right side, suggesting that they are more likely to happen, are stuff like, look at this, people cannot tell what is true and what is not, billionaires running the world, people can't afford to live on their own. I'm afraid to reveal the obvious, but all these things are already happening right now. I mean, let's just take that first one. People cannot tell what is true and what isn't. We are literally in that era as I speak. At this point, with AI and the deep fake technology that they've been working on for decades now, and now it's all coming out, this video right here, me talking to you right now, could potentially be an AI deep fake video. At this stage in the game, there's virtually little that you can do to detect whether or not what I am saying actually came from Dan Dix or if it came from some kind of crazy computer program. We're there. We're living in it now. And it is kind of scary to think, but that's the situation. That's the reality. They go on to point out stuff like, people cannot afford to live on their own. Again, newsflash, guys. Right now, 64% of Americans, in particular, are living paycheck to paycheck. The situation is very similar in Canada. Over 50% of Canadians currently live paycheck to paycheck. That means that any slight interruption in their finances due to unforeseen circumstances, like a medical emergency or something as simple as a blown out tire, could completely disrupt everything and cause them to essentially go homeless. We're already in this dire situation right now. And they are suggesting that these are things that are likely to happen within, 3 to 9 years. Like, look at this chart here. They say, like, in 3 years from now, people won't be able to tell what is true and what isn't. I would argue that that's already happening. In 5 years from now here, they say billionaires are going to run the world. I mean, hasn't this essentially been the case for pretty much the larger part of the last couple of centuries? Certainly the last, with the formation of the Federal Reserve in the United States and the Rothschild banking dynasty, coming up with the banking practice of lending money out of nothing, fractional reserve lending. This is a centuries-old concept now. So the idea is that billionaires are running the world it's not going to happen in 5 years. It's been happening already for over 100 years. So to say that these guys are behind a little bit is an understatement. Emergency responses could be overwhelmed in 6 years. Biodiversity loss in ecosystems collapse in 7. Democratic systems potentially breaking down in 6 years from now. Again, That's not necessarily a bad thing. If you want to see my views on that, guys, check out my video, basically documentary, the democracy deception, and most importantly, part 2, the democracy deception part 2, what's the alternative? Very important stuff to understand, guys. I'll put links to that in the description below. But again, here they're trying to say all these things are going to happen in the next 3 to 9 years, but a lot of them are already happening. I mean, you got this secret RCMP report that essentially pointed that out. All this stuff, like, Canadians are eventually going to realize that this stuff is happening, and they're absolutely broke, and they're probably soon going to revolt. They say sometime in the next 5 years. This is where I covered the recent release of this highly redacted document while explaining what Canadians should do and be doing now to protect themselves from what we all already know is coming. And that's something that I wanted to focus on a little bit today, guys. You've got these top 10 most likely disruptions, top 10 highest impacted, disruptions. And it's all stuff that we're already dealing with and have been for some time. But viewers of Press for Truth will hopefully be 2 steps ahead if they understand the fact that the one thing that these people fear the most, the oligarchy, the powers that ought not be, is a fully self-sustainable individual who is not reliant on them, who does not need any subsidies, who does not need any grants, who does not need any handouts or benefits from the government, who does not need any loans from the bank or credit cards or mortgages or lines of credits or help in any way, and those who don't even need help from the grocery stores. A completely, fully self-sustainable, 100% sovereign individual is the number one thing that these people fear the most. So if you don't currently have a plan to have something like this in place, then you are indeed falling behind. They're trying to already warn policy makers what, they can do to circumvent some of these potential disruptions. Well, we already know they are coming, and there's a lot of things that you can be doing as well. And I would say the number one thing is working on making this a reality. Now, some of the things that you have to do in order to make something like that a reality are sometimes easier said than done. For example, I think the number one key step here is to get out of debt. Now, I know that's easier said than done in a world that's built off of this debt-based system where fractional reserve lending is the name of the game. And so sometimes people may have to lower their standards of living to be able to own something outright rather than to have a larger piece of property that is essentially, indebting you to the banksters. So you may have to lower your expectations and your standards to what you find to be comfortable, but I would rather own a little shack than to have this giant mansion, and be indebted to the banksters. So that's the focus that we need to think on moving forward. We need tangible assets like gold, silver, heirloom seeds, a sustainable food garden. And these are the types of things that you need to be thinking about moving forward. So, it's interesting that they're essentially engaging in essentially predictive programming, but they're not giving anybody the real, survival skills that they need to focus on. What people really need to be focusing on now is getting out of debt, securing for yourself a fully self-sustainable garden so that you can no longer have to be relying on the governments or the banks or even the grocery stores moving forward, guys. That's the one thing they don't want you to realize, is that the true enemy of the system is a 100% freely sovereign individual who's fully capable of taking care of themselves. And hopefully you are on the path to being one of those thorns in the sides of the global elite. So just wanted to bring all of this to your attention. I did think it was interesting that only, shortly after the secret RCMP report was revealed, we have this Policy Horizons report given to the government of Canada here, warning of more potential disruptions. You've got, the UK government literally putting out a prepper website for people in the UK, telling them, that it's time to prepare. They're not wrong about that, guys. But some of the things you need to actively focus on is getting out of the system, removing yourself from the banksters entirely, and being a 100% self-sustainable individual who's capable of, living his life not depending on anybody, especially the government. So just wanted to bring all that to your attention, guys. Once again, if you do appreciate my efforts to bring you this info, I'd ask that you check me out at this Go Get Funding campaign. Again, these are the powers that ought not be who are pulling the strings, who are the puppet masters on all of these, politicians and media moguls and tech leaders around the world. Bilderberg is where a lot of this stuff gets decided, guys. So I will be there next week in Madrid, Spain. If you appreciate my efforts to continuously expose groups like Bilderberg, don't forget to check out that top link in the description below to where you can find this Go Get Funding campaign, guys. Thank you so much to everybody who has contributed so far. I can't do this work without your support. So thank you very much, guys. Please share this video. Click the thumbs up button on this one and stay tuned. We're going to have more video reports coming soon, God willing. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.